Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to the inn. The WitchWood is a new Hearthstone expansion that is on the horizon, and next Monday, for that matter, we get to see the first official dump of big cards.
I was about to say, wait, it's coming out next Monday? Man, we have a lot of work to do.
I know. But we can see the first official big dump of cards, and then we just see the slow trickle of cards throughout the time between now and then. But to kind of moisten our appetites and give something for us to sink our teeth into, we have 10 cards to review. So let's start right off with Azalina Soulthief.
Azalina.
Azalina, thank you. 7 costs, 3/3. With a battle cry, replace your hand with a copy of your opponent's. Alright. I saw this, and my first immediate thought went straight to Bulb. I am not gonna lie, because I know Bulb. I know he enjoys wacky, zany cards like this. And it's just like, this could be something that he could potentially grab and use, because it's just like, this is just his field of expertise. However, I've also gotten to, in my thoughts, that depending on how the metagame shapes and how it turns, because we were having rotation and everything, I don't know where she will fall. But, depending on how things go, she can become an interesting niche tool that can be thrown into decks that need to refuel and refill their hand after their initial refuel and refill is, well, there it goes. Plus, it also gives you an insight to what your opponent's hand and what they have in store later down the line goes. So, I get to thinking about, like, the Control Warlock and, like, Cube Lock being like, alright, well, I'm playing Paladin, or at least Aggro Paladin at the start. If I don't have you dead by X turn, well, might as well start playing your deck now. Doop-de-doop-de-doop. That's my fun, and that's my rant for this. I will, right now, just kind of put it in the let's see how things go territory. Bob?
I'm going to tell you the truth. At first, I actually dismissed this card, mainly because, to me, it seemed way too similar to Lillian Voss, who I remember when we had the original discussions for Knights of the Frozen Throne, I actually said that I did not like her and I thought she was trash because of certain reasons. And I was about to go that way with Azalina, but a few things came to my attention. Number one, it doesn't, like, it replaces with a copy of your opponent's hand, so it actually works better as as you said, a refill move. And so it's not like going, I'm just replacing certain spells with this or certain cards, or if you only have 3 cards and then your opponent has 7, you only get 3 cards. No, it just completely replaces it. So you can choose when to play this, and you can play it when it works, when it's most advantageous to you. So in that regards, as far as Battlecry, it's actually a lot better than Lillian Voss. And for me, now I start thinking about what I could potentially do with it. Do I necessarily put it into my Burgle Road deck or my Lyra Benedictus deck? I'm actually not sure. Because, yeah, it's Burgle Rogue and Thief Priest and whatnot, but I'd have to look at what I'd have to take out, what I have to substitute for it. I mean, this might actually just slot in just a lot easier just for my Lyra Benedictus deck, just because it's rotation. I'll have to see what's rotating in and out. It just might actually find a home there. And as we pointed out, to get card draw and value, you could play it. It's actually going to help you out a lot. The one sticking point for me is it's a 7 cost 3/3. And that stat line is a very big sticking point, because you're probably, It's probably not going to really contest the board a lot. It's not going to be like Zola, who actually had decent stats along with her her small cost. So I mean, yeah, it did niche things, but a niche had a niche effect, but it wasn't like its stats were underpowered. And for me, this is kind of like that 8 cost. What was her name? The 8 cost 3/3 or whatever.
That recruited a minion from your deck.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's basically it's weak because of the junk stat line. And the big argument came down with recruit, and why a lot of people really didn't, why it was really hard to evaluate recruit was because it was valued so highly when it came to cost. And so I still think that that card isn't great because of that stat line, but whatever. It's not legendary. This is, and the stat line is absolutely horrendous. And I do not think that the battle cry is good enough to warrant this 3/3 stat line on a 7 cost. At the very least, make it a 5/5, because at least 5/5s can kinda contest the board a little bit. You're really giving up a lot of tempo just to get value on later turns. Not even necessarily this turn. It just depends on what you're playing against. And now your opponent knows exactly what's in your hand, although you know exactly what's in their hand. And it's very weird. You're giving up a lot of tempo. You're giving up some advantage on your end just to refill your hand, or to basically get an idea what they have. And you're losing any cards that might have been in your hand originally. Is that good enough? I'm not sure it is with this stat line. And that means this is already a card with a niche enough usage that could maybe see play, maybe not see play. It was just very niche, but I think what's really going to prevent it from seeing a lot of play is the stat line. Even with a 5/5 stat line, it would have been a niche card, but it would have seen a little bit of play. With at 3/3, I'm just not sure this card is good enough. And that's going to be a huge factor that even I'm going to have to consider when I'm trying to decide whether I want to put it in existing decks. For Burglar Rogue, which is a wild deck, this card may not be worth it. And for my Thief Priest deck, Lyra Benedictus, it just depends on what other cards come out in this set. The stat line here, the attack and defense, is a huge downside for this card. And like I said before, I do not think the Battle Cry, the effect, really is enough to put this card over the top that I'll say, definitely I'm using it. So, this is wait and see. I'm not sure. This actually is not a card I'm excited about. I might mess around if I get her, but otherwise, this might be a pass for me. I was expecting a little bit of surprise from Eddie.
Oh no, it's just more or less I'm just going, okay.
Well, before we get to the next card, one of the themes that we're going to be seeing in this expansion is the idea of, again, we are having build-around cards again, which are always nice to see. Cards that you have to kind of build a deck around. That you build a deck around these cards, and so that it's built in a certain way. We've seen this before with Highlander decks. We've seen this before with the Princes, where basically there's a cost restriction involved, and you have to consider building your deck around in a certain way. And for the next 2 legendaries, that's especially huge because their effects kick in at the start of the game. There's actually a little word where it says start of game. And basically what happens is it's not like you can actually cheat these effects out. It looks at the very beginning of the game and takes place. So you can't really go, well, it's an odd cost. Basically, the idea is that even in odd cost decks, you can't go, well, I'm going to include the next one, which is the next menu I'm about to talk about, which is about that relies on odd cost cards. But I'll include one even cost card, and it's not going to work. It's not going to be like Reno or Kazakus or anything like the Princes, where you can just hold on to it if you need to. This happens at the very beginning of the game, which means that you have to really think about this when building a deck. Now, the good thing is, and I might as well get into it with our first one, which is Baku the Mooneater, which is a 9-cost 7/8 beast with the effect start of the game. If your deck has only odd cost cards, upgrade your hero power. Now, it upgrades your hero power in the same way that Just a Card Trueheart did. So I'm sure that we're going to have them listed on the screen to give you an idea what the upgraded hero powers are. So it's those upgraded hero powers whenever they talk about an upgraded hero power. But yeah, you really can't try to cheat this out. Now, what the good news is that if you decide to play a deck that's centered around Baku, that when you start building the deck and you select Baku, the deck builder will then give you access to cards and only show you odd cost cards, so you're not going to get confused. But, you know, it is a big deck building challenge. Now, the good news is that hopefully by the end of these card reviews, that in the 10 cards that we are reviewing today are the only cards with these stipulations of either that they belong in odd cost decks or even cost decks. They have said they are not going to reveal any more of those cards. So we know all of those unique cards that rely on those stipulations, including these 2 legendaries where you have to have them at the beginning of the game. Baku the Mooneater. There's a lot of different decks I can go into it, and I think I'm really excited about this kind of card creation that encourages this type of unique deck building. I like that Blizzard is going more in that direction. And Baku, it's not, stat line wise, it's not bad. It's 9 cost, 7/8. To be fair, it's not bad, especially since it's a 7/8 beast. Yeah, that means it's going to be a vanilla 7/8 when it comes out, kind of like Prince Malchezaar was, but you're more putting this in your deck for the effect. And there are a lot of different classes that could use starting out with an upgraded hero power. Because you have odd cost cards, that means that you have nothing to do on turn 2, and maybe that hero power is what you're really going to rely on. There's a lot of different decks that can rely on that. One of the big ones people are floating around and I see really making a comeback is the classic type of armor up control warrior. Just armor up a bit, what we know as fatigue warrior. I think fatigue warrior is going to make a huge comeback with Baku. A lot of people are looking at different variations of it. Taunt warrior with Baku, just regular control warrior. They're just looking at just to outlast your opponent going into fatigue. And a lot of the cards that could race the warrior and put up a fight with that kind of warrior, a lot of those type of decks are actually leaving standard on rotation. Jade Druid being a big one. They can't hope to just outlast you with Jade Idols. That does not work. So Warrior, I know, is going to be one of the biggest classes taking advantage of Baku. I was also thinking, and I saw somebody suggest this, and it's something I might actually experiment with a little bit, which is taking a return to Quest Hunter. Seeing that maybe with an upgraded hero power, if that's enough to really get Quest Hunter off the ground. I'm not sure if it is, but it's something worth exploring, because a lot of the key cards I think are important in that deck are odd cost. So, you really don't need anything even. And so you can really work on kind of tweaking the deck to basically rely maybe more on odd cost cards. I'm sure that really, if depending on what the hero power is, you could probably come up with a lot of different decks based off the different heroes. I think any quest deck can greatly benefit from Baku, because you want to make that turn 1 play anyway. And one of the problems with quest decks that a lot of people point out is the fact that basically playing the quest takes up a whole turn 1. But if you're playing an odd cost deck with Baku, a Baku deck, let's just say, you really do want to make a turn 1 play, and that makes the turn 1 quest play the most appealing play you can make with this type of deck. So I would say that for a lot of quest decks, it might not be bad to consider, can you build them in a way that takes advantage of Baku, or is it worth not doing it that way? I don't know. It depends on the trade-off. So it depends. I think this card and the next card we're going to talk about opens up a lot of creative space. I think besides the obvious Fatigue Warrior deck, I think there are a lot of other possibilities out there, and I think this is definitely going to be a card that's going to see a lot of play as people experiment with it.
I have already done it once. I'm going to do it again. I'm throwing my sword in the sand. I'm making the claim. Baku the Mooneater is going to be a meta-defining card.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. If anything, because you already mentioned Tank Up Warrior, which, yes, you are correct. You mentioned Quest Hunter could be something that people explore, which, most certainly. There could be a variation of, spells potentially kind of thrown in there as well. I mean, like
Yeah, and going back on Quest Hunter, I mean, it really works. I mean, it really works because Baku's a beast.
3 damage, 3 damage, 3 damage.
And all of your major spells or major pieces that you want to use in Hunter are odd cost.
And not only that, but you also got to thinking about, you know, like, when you look down the scope a little bit, you look at Mage. Mage has a really good hero power when it's juiced up. You tap for 2. That controls a lot of your aggro boards and just keeps them going, well, what can I play? Yeah, sure, you're tapping for 2, but if you kind of wrap your head around it, you're just going, yeah, it's a 2 damage that I can just flick at something. Another thing that I always kind of flick back to in my mind, I go along the lines of Q block. On one end, yes, you're losing a lot of your AoE tools. However, there's only been 10 cards announced, so there could be things coming down the pipe. So we'll have to come back to where Q block is concerned on that one, because being able to tap for free and not have to take damage, that's always a good thing. Dude Paladin ain't going nowhere. Especially with this being able to be your hero power. You tap, you get 2 dudes. And if anything, a good chunk of your Paladin stuff that goes with Dude Paladin is freaking odd. Oh no, I don't get Tarum. It'd be a shame if I had a 3-cost 1/4 discover a fucking legendary, wouldn't it? I wonder where that came from, Drangora. But you get my point. I mean, there's a lot of places where Baku can just kind of slither his way in. So if anything...
I mean, the only thing I think that Dude Paladin, besides Tarum, would lose would maybe be the Stegodon, because I think that's 4 cost.
It loses to Stegodon.
Yeah, and they're not going to have their AoE, but they're just going to smash you in the face.
Yeah, that's what its job is to do, basically. And I mean, you've got level up to be able to level up your things. You've got your Vine Cleaver still. So it's just like, oh no! But at the same time, you know, you still got the good stuff. But are we good on Baku?
Yeah, let's talk about the next one.
I'm going to go to, then, Genn Greymane. For this one, of course, starting your game, if your deck has only even cost cards, your starting hero power only costs 1. I keep having it itch in the back of my head, because if anything, I look at Wild as the very first spot for Genn Greymane. And I go, can I potentially mix and fuse this together with just a card True Heart to get the upgraded 1-cost hero power? Because there is no how.
Your starting hero power.
Your starting hero power costs 1.
Yep.
Just a card True Heart.
Upgrade your hero power. It's a new hero power.
Replace your starting hero power with a better one. What's our battle cry?
It replaces your starting hero power. So it will give you a better one, but it will no longer cost 1.
That's the thing, though, that's why I'm saying it itches in my mind. Does it work like Raza?
It's card interactions. That's how it works.
This is one of those things where it's like on one end...
Raza doesn't say your starting hero power now costs 1. Raza says that your hero power costs 1 for the rest of the game. So it changes your hero power cost in general. Genn Greymane only changes the hero power cost of the hero power you start with. If you change your hero power in any way, it now costs 2 again.
That's one of those things where even now I'm sitting here scratching my head. I'm just going, why, how, who,
Reading comprehension.
It's not reading comprehension. It's more or less interaction questions. Because it's one of those things where not even I dug into that one.
It is basic interaction questions. Is basically, Genn, it's your starting hero power. So the hero power you start off with. If your hero power changes in any way, it's no longer your starting hero power.
Now here's the thing though, if we find out differently, I'm gonna make sure I do it publicly and go, yeah, I got you. But I'll more than likely be the one to eat crow here. So if anything, moving on with Genn. I look at Control Warlock being a thing. I know people have talked about the totems essentially coming back, but at the same time I look at Baku and I just go, no, Baku's more the thing that would do this. So I'm gonna point at that. But as far as Genn Greymane goes, I'm just going, what am I gonna do with, like, as far as the even side goes? Because the only one that my brain has just kind of like wrapped its head around is Control Warlock. And at the same time, I'm going, alright, we could do Reno and Wild. But if you think, Bob, give me your flavor and taste on this one.
I guess it really depends. Now, first off, I'm going to let's talk about the totem decks real quickly. Because a lot of people are going, it could be Baku, it could be Genn. Personally, because I have a totem deck in Wild, I don't think you use either of them for totems. Yes, Baku gives you an upgraded hero power from the start of the game, but most of the totems you want to use are, I don't know, 2 cost? Or even? And then for Genn Greymane, it's like, oh, hero power costs 1. Yeah, but there's a whole lot of odd cost cards that play nice with totems, which means that really, your true blue totem deck, unless you create something new and standard, your true blue's totem deck cannot use either of these cards. Because you have odd cost cards you kind of need, and you have a lot of even cost cards you really need. So, yeah, a totem deck really does not work with either of these. Unless you do a newfangled standard totem deck, and we'll have to see how that works with Baku. With Genn, I don't know. It might be a new kind of deck entirely. We have been kind of looking at these from a perspective of some of the cards, some of the decks that already exist. And I'm wondering with Genn if it's going to be something we haven't even thought of. I think one of the things that was brought up was, well, you can do Face Hunter with Genn. Yeah, that's true. You have a hero power that costs 1, so you can hero power pretty much every turn, and you probably should hero power every turn. Hunter has a lot of even cost minions that they can just kind of put out in a zoo-like fashion. That's true, I guess, but they're going to lose a lot of their engine cards and removal, but that might not be a big deal if you're just going face. You're still going to have stuff like Houndmaster, so yeah, I guess you can use Genn Greymane for Face Hunter, but then again, you could also play Baku and run Face Hunter. I think that there are aggressive Hunter decks that can be created with either one of these legendary minions. So it's not like, this is going to be a solely Hunter thing. I think the type of cards or type of decks we're going to see with even cost with Genn are probably decks we haven't really thought of or imagined yet. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that exists now that will really want Genn. So, I'm not sure. I think aggressive decks, maybe? I think aggressive decks definitely would prefer Genn. But again, you could probably create an aggressive deck with Baku as well. So, this is one of those that I think that it will be useful. I think it will be used, but I'm not sure if we actually have seen or know of the type of deck that's going to really utilize Genn to the most of its ability. This is one of those things I'm going to say, let's wait and see on it. So, up next we have Phantom Militia, which is a 3-cost 2/4 with Echo and Taunt. Now, Echo is one of the new keywords being introduced in this expansion, and it's kind of like it's kind of like Unstable Evolution, where basically if you have the mana cost, you can cast this card multiple times a turn. So That means for Phantom Militia, on turn 3 you can cast it once. On turn 6 you can cast it twice if you want to. And on turn 9 you can cast it 3 times, having 3 2/4s with taunt. Which means that and that's really nice, I think, for Phantom Militia, because that means that no matter what portion or part of the game you play it in, it's always going to feel like it's important, like it has weight. And that also means that there's a bit of decision making that has to come to you about when you want to actually play this card. Do you want to play it for immediate value on 3, or do you want to hold it back for a few turns and play more of them later? I think this is going to be a key card for a new improved Taunt Warrior, because you can get multiple ticks with Phantom Militia, and even if you already have your upgraded Ragnar's hero power, that's still a lot of taunts you can put on the board to just stall things out. I think a lot of Zoo type decks might think about using this too, playing this as well, because basically, like I said, the value potential for this is incredible, and you can pretty much play it whenever you want, and you can't really lose tempo value from it. You can just put a lot of dudes on the board. So, yeah, I think this card is very, very playable. I think we're going to see this a lot.
I definitely have to agree. I figure, if anything, one of the biggest homes it'll have will be in Taunt Warrior. The second biggest home might be somewhere in, like, Shaman or something along those lines, but that's just me. But there's always the meme that keeps going around because of Silverback Patriarch being the 3-cost 1/4. It's like, stop, it's already dead. And now we got another really good 3-cost X4 with Taunt.
And we've already had, I know privately, we've had the whole conversation about why the discussion around Silverback Patriarch is just dumb. Because it really isn't power creep, because it's a basic card. That's the whole purpose it's supposed to serve. It's supposed to get you started, and everything else is supposed to be better than it.
I know, you just gotta love the memes around it is all.
Well, there's also people who actually seriously aren't stupid and don't think. They're probably the same people who whine and complain about Fiery War Axe. While I think the change that was made actually makes a lot of sense.
Oh no, it definitely makes sense.
But that's me getting off on another tangent. We don't need that.
Yep, we don't need to do that. But if anything, you mentioned Fire War Axe, which brings us to Warrior. So I get to bring up Militia Commander. She's a 4-cost 2/5 Rush Battle Cry, gain 3 attack this turn. Now, Rush is a new keyword as well in this expansion. That it's like Charge, but you're not going face. You have to attack the minions, and it's just like, well, that's great. You've done something about Charge. Are you gonna go back and fix the other Charge cards too? No, probably not. Okay. But let's go with Militia Commander as a thing. 4-cost, 5/5 on the turn she's dropped because of Battle Cry. You're going to be able to take out something that has 5 health or less. After that, she just goes back to being a 2x. I say 2x because of whatever the health is that she remains as. Don't get me wrong. I look at it and I can see where she could be played. But I need more. I need more to be able to know whether or not she's going to be useful enough to be able to fit into my warrior deck to make it to where she's useful. So, Bulb, I throw it to you.
I think this new keyword, and no, they're not going to go back and change Charge, because Charge is Charge, Rush is Rush. The big difference is that, I think it was Charge Devilsaur? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Charge Devilsaur has Charge. That means if you cheat it out, it can go face. If you cheat out a Rush minion, it can't go face. That's the big difference. Is it with Charge and Rush. And they're not going to go back and change it because, Charge is Charge and Rush is Rush. even if the spell card charge is essentially give a character rush now, which is absolutely hilarious. And that means that if you cheat Militia Commander out, she can still kind of rush and attack a minion, but she can't go face. Sorry, sucks for you. The problem is if you cheat her out, she's now a 2/5 that can't go face on the first turn, as opposed to a 5/5 that can't go face on the first turn if you just played her. Because rush basically has to do with summoning. So essentially, if you play her from a hand, she becomes a 5/5, and basically that allows you at turn 4 to kind of get rid of a problematic creature on the board, and more than likely still have her on the board, have her to contest the board, which is actually kind of good, kind of cool. She's more of a control tool rather than an aggressive tool, and I think that's something you need to keep in mind. I think what they wanted to do with Rush is charge has been problematic. They needed a way to do a charge mechanic like they wanted to do, but not have it be entirely broken, and this is what they've come up with. That means we might still see some charge, but I think it's mainly going to start being more and more rush because of how problematic charge has been and how much that Team 5 has stated they're not huge fans of charge. So expect to see less and less charge now. But yeah, I think she's a wonderful control tool for Warrior, and I think that she probably will see some play. So up next, there's also another new mechanic. I guess you can call it a new mechanic. They're basically calling it the Worgen mechanic. It's not outright stated on the card, but basically there are a few cards that will actually change. Now it says each turn this is in your hand, swap its attack and health, and basically the card art will change as well. The big example they gave is Pumpkin Peasant. It's a 3-cost 2/4 with lifesteal, and then it has the Worgen effect. Each turn this is in your hand, swap its attack and health. We're also going to show what the different card is, that basically when it changes, it actually changes to werewolf form, so that, it's not like the stats just change, the whole card actually changes, and that's kind of cool. As far as Pumpkin Peasant, don't get me wrong, lifesteal is kind of big, but is this good enough to make a difference? I'm actually not sure. My gut says this probably will not see a lot of play, because even though I think lifesteal is huge, a 2/4 or a 4/2 I don't think really is enough to really contest and do much of anything. And if they don't want, maybe if you want it for the lifesteal element, maybe it works, but I also think that there are better minions and better minions out there to basically give you the same effect. So I don't think this is a card that's going to see a lot of play, but as a card to introduce us to the work mechanic, this makes me a little interested to see what other working cards are going to be in the set.
I can agree. I'm more or less meh on it, to be perfectly honest with you. So, if anything, I do like the aspect of there being this Worgen or this change of monsters and how they interact in your hand. So I'm just like, ooh, I can get behind this idea. So, other than that, the only thing I could potentially see this bad boy going into is Arena.
Oh, it's powerful in Arena.
And yeah, I can see where it would fall there. But other than that, meh. If anything, next up we will go with Glitter Moth. 5-cost 4/4 Battlecry. If your deck has only odd cards, double the health of all of your minions. It's also a beast. And it's also one of those things I go, what? Because it's just like, alright, number one. If you're trying to double the health of your minions, you've already got a card that does that for 2. And that's Divine Spirit. Sure, it does it for all the other minions on the board. But I'd rather be able to just play the 2-cost thingy. So it's just like, Glitter Moth. I see your viability, or at least I see that you can be useful. I will need to see further down the line whether or not you make it. Like, you make a cut, or at least you make something, of yourself. Because, I can see you being put into a combo Inner Fire Priest deck because, well, combo / Inner Fire Priest is a big thing right now. Not even gonna joke. Not even gonna lie. So, I'll kick this in your direction.
Unlike some of the other cards we're about to evaluate based on the even-odd concept, because one of the things when you evaluate these cards is you not only need to evaluate them with the idea of the even-odd concept in mind, but you also need to evaluate are their stats and non-battle cry abilities going to be good enough if they were not in this specific type of deck. So for Glitter Moth, the answer is no. By itself, it's a 5-cost 4/4. Priest has better options, I think, in general. I just don't think that stat line is good enough to justify. Priest has no reason to care about the Beast tag. 4/4 is not good enough by itself for the 5-cost, and really, this would need to be in an odd-cost deck. So the question is, would there be a good Baku Priest deck that would want to run Glitter Moth? I don't know, because if you're running Baku, the whole thing with Glitter Moth is it's not going to be about the combo, it's going to be about increasing the chance of your minion survivability. Because really, there's not going to be a really easy way with a Baku deck to pull off that combo, because you're not going to have access to Divine Spirit. Inner Fire, yes. Divine Spirit, no.
I raise my hand and say one thing. The only reason I interrupt you during this broadcast is because it's more or less I can look at you guys and say there is one card that could potentially make this viable. Temporis. You have 2 turns to kill me. Do it, or you're dead.
Yeah, but Temporis is we've seen Temporis not really. I don't think you want to rely on Temporis.
I know you don't want to rely on it being a mainstay thing. However, I did watch WECG this weekend, and I did get to see Frozen vs. Dog, and Temporis did come into play during a match versus Deadman Hand Warrior, and it won him the game because of it. So,
yeah, but at that point, you're going to want to play Temporis in an actual combo deck, because an odd-cost Baku deck is really not going to be able to pull off the combo. You're not going to be able to get those health values as high as you can if you just played a Priest deck without any conditions. Glitter Moth is basically going to be very effective in a Baku-style Priest deck that cares about high health minions that you can that can heal and keep up to snuff. That basically you want to control and you want to fight in the mid game. The problem is right now there's not a lot of Priest decks that can do it. Maybe a Zoo type Priest deck, but some of the cards that you would want to run in a Zoo type Priest deck you can't run in a Baku Priest deck. So this is one of those cards that is going, if a Baku mid-range type Priest deck is created, Glitter Moth could find a home. However, I'm not sure that's likely. I'm really not. I think Priest would just want to cut its losses and just create a straight-up regular deck. And even the ones I can think of maybe would consider it, like, I don't know, Quest Priest? Why would you want to play Glitter Moth? Because the whole point in Quest Priest is you kind of want your Death Rattle minions to eventually die.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a home for it right now, but I think that if that type of Priest deck does arise, Glitter Moth will find a home. Otherwise, it doesn't have anything attached to the card that would want to make you play it separately. So I'm just not sure Glitter Moth actually makes it in the long run.
I think right now we'll just have to take Glitter Moth and just have to go, alright, we're going to put you right where we put all the other cards. We'll wait. And we'll actively wait to see if anything crops and pops up that makes us go, Glitter Moth would go great with this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is really going to depend on what arises and what other cards come out. Because as it stands right now, I just don't think it's good enough.
Completely understandable, and you make a fair and balanced argument.
So next up, we have Gloom Stag. Gloom Stag is a 5-cost 2/6 Druid beast with Taunt and the Battle Cry. If your deck has only odd cost cards, gain +2/+2. This is interesting. I think a 5-cost 2/6 Taunt might be worth it. I mean, that's a stretch in normal main, so you could always maybe find a place with it if it wasn't a Baku deck. But I think in a Baku Druid deck, this card really shines because it becomes a 5-cost 4/8 beast, taunt beast. And when you really think about it, a lot of if you're playing a Hadronox deck, a taunt druid deck, odd cost cards are really going. There's a lot of really good odd cost taunt cards that you want to play anyway. Sure, there are some cards that you're not going to play that are synergistic that you can't play, but I think there are enough odd cost taunts at this point that it kind of makes Gloom Stag worth it, especially when you consider, again, it's a 5-cost 4/8 taunt. So I think in a good Hadronox deck with Baku, this could really work, especially when you consider that it upgrades your hero power so that you're essentially getting 2 attack and 2 armor. And then you can upgrade your hero power even further because the Death Knight is odd cost as well. That could give you even more taunts that can come back with Hadronox. I just think this synergizes really well, and we could really see maybe see Taunt Druid actually kind of become an actual interesting deck. Outside of that, I think it could be useful, it could not be useful. It just depends on what we really get. I think it's decent. I think it's a decent card, but I don't think it's as good as if you're playing it in a Baku Taunt Druid deck. The only issue I can see in a Baku Druid deck is the fact that Druid doesn't have a lot of access to removal in the first place. One of their biggest removal tools is Swipe, and you would not have that in a Baku deck. You would have access to Wrath, and you might have to think about Starfall. So I think one of the things we have to keep track of as we go forward to really know if a Baku Druid deck is going to be viable is we're going to need to see if Druid gets any more removal tools. If they do, and those removal tools are odd cost, I think this might be a really cool meta deck we could see going forward. Would be Baku Taunt Druid.
First thing comes first, I must correct you. Wrath is a 2-cost.
What's a 2 cost?
Wrath is a 2-cost.
No, it's 3 cost.
However, Naturalize is a 1-cost.
I'm pretty sure it's a 3 cost.
Wrath. I am looking dead at Wrath right now. Choose 1, deal 3 damage, or deal 1, draw 1. It is a 2-cost. You were talking to someone who played Jade Druid for quite a while and ran this card in.
All right, my bad. I really thought it was a 3 cost.
Thunk. No, mine.
Well, that really does mean that their Druid's access to removal tools is shockingly bad, which is going to be a big point against this deck.
It is, at least on the standard side of things. Now, in Wild, you can go absolutely bonkers on how you want to be able to do things. Because you got access to Raven Idol, you have Mulch in Wild. I mean, there's a lot there. But if anything, like, when I take a look at this thing, I think about the possibilities that can come with it. Like, if I have Ixlid on board alongside this bad boy, I'm dropping down 2 4/8s, not even caring.
Isn't Ixlid a 4 cost?
Ixlid is a 5-cost.
Okay.
Because it's 5-cost 2/4. You also have things like, of course, Hadronox bringing it back. I mean, you've also got Cenarius if you'd want to run it with this stuff to just make it branch out and build bigger. there's a lot you can do with it. I mean, even if you would want to run it in standard for that matter, like, there are ways you can run this in standard that could make it work. It's figuring out the keys and figuring out the tools to do it. Because a lot of the even stuff that would maybe clog or at least, potentially bog the deck down, it's mostly rotate now, but like right now, one of the new decks that's come to fruition is Astral Tiger Druid, which you just sit there and you just go, wait, what?
Okay, I know that one's a 4-cost.
Yeah, that one's a new one even for me. So
yeah, you're
I'm
not going
like,
to be able to run that in a Baku deck.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to run it in a Baku deck at all, but yeah. I was mainly going with just Druid in general, if you want to take a look at this from a non-evens and odds side thing. So, you've got at least that in mind. I do think this is viable. I do think this is a really playable card. So, I put it in my playable section.
I do think it's playable, but it's one of those things that I think I'm not sure how the Baku deck is going to do when you really don't have access to a lot of removal. Even in Wild, you're saying, oh, Wild has access to this. True, but it still has some huge removal problems because Druid has huge removal problems in the first place, and it's getting rid of one of your biggest removal tools in Swipe. Also, the fact that you don't have a lot of card draw options, and you don't have a lot of ramp options. So a lot of the stuff that Druid really needs to be viable, Baku decks completely wipe out. So I think in order for a Baku Taunt Druid deck to really work, you really need some of those options at odd cost intervals.
You have, like you already mentioned Starfall.
Starfall is pretty much the only thing you have access to.
Yeah, that's in standard, mind you. In Wild, you also have Nourish, which does both.
Well, you have access to Nourish in standard as well.
Yes. I figure I'll at least make mention of those things.
But by that point, do you want card draw or ramp? And by that point, you probably don't care.
Exactly. You also have Greedy Sprite, which is a 3-cost.
True.
So if anything, you do have options. And let's not forget, with Wild, you have Grove Tender, which that one is a choose one. You get, you and your opponent both get a mana crystal, or you both get to draw a card. So there's a lot to be mixed and play around with when it comes to this one. But let's not get hung up and stuck on it. We got 2 more to go. Because the next one is Black Cat. 3 costs, 3/3, Beast. Spell damage +1, Battle Cry. If your deck has only odd cards, draw a card. Okay, first of all, I'm going to just put my hand over the Battle Cry. Because just on the stat line alone, 3 costs, 3/3, +1 spell damage, that's pretty dang amazing, as it is. It takes me back to the likes of Cult Sorcerer. You could say Suit Spewer, but I'm just like, Suit Spewer was a mech for mech decks, so it's just like, you probably ran it in that area. And then I kind of take my hand off the Battle Cry area, and I just go, alright, so if I want to run this in a Baku/Jaina deck, I realistically could. It gives me more draw to be able to speed through my deck. It's really good. It's got a decent stat line, and of course, like, the +1 spell damage is really good. Inside an odd deck or outside an odd deck, I think this card sees play. So, Bob, I'm kicking this ball your direction.
Oh, absolutely it sees play. This is one of the ones where I had to, I'm like going, I don't know, then I'm like, wait, stupid. Because Cult Sorcerer saw play. Even outside of Cthulhu decks, because the thing is, that if it's good enough, where the other effects don't matter, it's still going to see play. And it's a 3-cost, 3/3 with spell damage +1. That by itself means it's going to see play. The battle cry is just icing on the cake if you're playing a Baku deck. Is a Baku mage deck viable? I actually don't know, because there's a lot of good even cost mage cards, but there's also some good odd cost stuff as well. It's all going to depend on what you build your deck with. Now, there's a lot of good odd cost spells that are actually leaving now, and that's kind of huge. There's a lot of really good odd cost mage staples that are leaving. It's really going to depend on what mage gets access to. If mage gets access to some really good odd cost spells, a Baku mage deck is actually probably very viable. If it doesn't, Black Cat's still going to see play because it's a freaking 3-cost 3/3 with spell damage. It's just good. So I'll be considering whether an odd cost spell damage deck will be viable once I see more cards. I'll have to kind of even things out. But even if it's not, Black Cat will still find a home. So yeah, this is a very playable card. We're going to see it. And last we have Murkspark Eel. Murkspark Eel is a 2-cost 2/3 Shaman Beast with the Battle Cry. If your deck has only even cost cards, deal 2 damage. Stat-wise, it's not bad. It's 2-cost 2/3, so if you're not playing a Genn deck, you could conceivably play Murkspark Eel, although there's a lot of good 2-cost cards that I don't think that Shaman's just going to play Murkspark Eel just for the stat line alone. Again, Shaman has a lot of options. Now, is a Genn Shaman deck worthwhile? I don't know. I don't know. It just depends. Do they want to just summon? I mean, that allows them to summon just a random totem on turn 1, gives them something to do. A lot of times, sometimes Shaman doesn't have something to do on turn 1. And I think Shaman could play a good zoo-type deck with Genn. This is one of those that I'm just going to say, let's wait and see what Shaman gets, what other cards are in the set. Because if an even cost of a Genn Shaman deck emerges, I think Murkspark Eel is going to be an automatic pick and is going to be a potentially meta-defining card, a very playable card. If it doesn't emerge, I mean, you can say hypothetically Murkspark Eel makes its way into Shaman decks, but again, I just don't think the stat line by itself is viable enough when Shaman has access to so many other decent 2-cost cards that they'll much rather have.
I honestly have to agree, because it's just like, we don't know what the rest of the set will hold. So it's just like, I will wait to see what happens where Shaman stuff is concerned before I place a stamp of approval, disappointment, or what have you on Murkspark Eel. I will make sure to even make note of it somewhere. So, is that everything, Bob?
Everything I can think of as far as the actual cards go, unless you want to say make any final statements as far as your thoughts on the general on the first things we've seen about the WitchWood. Other than that, I think that's good for me.
I think if anything, as far as I go, where the WitchWood goes, I think the WitchWood is giving us a lot of new ideas to kind of chew over when it comes to our deck building, in a sense. Gets us out of that whole, oh, we have to do this, we have to do that, as far as our gameplay goes. It's like, no. We can have a healthy metagame and just, do this, and this. Kind of like back when we had Ungoro.
And I'm all for that.
I am definitely all for, kind of wiping the slate clean again and having an Ungoro-like thing to where it's like each month leading up to the next expansion, we've got something new that kind of just pops up out of nowhere and just goes, well, okay. So, if anything, right now, we've got 10 cards. I had to wait till, and Bulb has to wait till, and so do you guys, had to wait till the 26th to see the next big drop of cards. After that, of course, we'll be right here to give you our perspective and point. You can see the next drop of cards at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific time on the Twitch TV / Play Hearthstone channel. So be sure to go check that out when it happens. And then Bulb and I are doing a recording, and we'll get it up on Wednesday of that week. So, if anything, from us to you guys, welcome to the WitchWood. Enjoy our reviews. Until next time, I'm out.